Welcome to our channel. Today, we are going to discuss the incident where Soviet cosmonauts witnessed an angel in space. Since the first cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin entered space in 1961, up until 2023, more than 600 cosmonauts from around the world have ventured into space. Many of them have encountered unexplainable phenomena in their memories, such as strange knocking sounds inside the spacecraft, peculiar light spots, unidentified flying objects, and more. One of the most extraordinary incidents occurred in 1985, when several Soviet cosmonauts were conducting repairs outside the Salyut 7 space station. They witnessed a massive, luminous object resembling a humanoid figure. Approximately 20 stories tall, surrounded by a faint halo-like mist. It even appeared to be smiling, and they referred to it as an angel. This sighting lasted for a remarkable 10 minutes. One of the cosmonauts mentioned this bizarre phenomenon in their report upon returning to Earth, but the Soviet authorities subsequently silenced the incident. What exactly did these cosmonauts see? What other phenomena did the Salyut space station encounter? Today, we will discuss this real event in space history. When we talk about space stations, the ones that come to mind are the International Space Station, led by the United States, and the Soviet Union's Mir space station. However, the world's first space station was actually the Soviets' Salyut series. During the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, the Soviets were the first to send humans into space and have them walk in space. Not to be outdone, the United States shifted the competition to the Moon. After the United States achieved manned lunar landing, the Soviet Union took a different approach and began constructing long-duration space stations. One of these stations was the Salyut series. It refers to a series of space stations built by the Soviet Union between 1971 and 1986. Starting from Salyut 1, Salyut 2, Salyut 3, Salyut 4, Salyut 5, and eventually Salyut 7. Salyut 7 was the most mature space station in this series. Launched in 1982 and operated for approximately 9 years, it exceeded its mission objectives and laid the foundation for the development of the subsequent Soviet Mir space station. The Angel incident occurred during a period of severe malfunction of Salyut 7. It was the final space station in the Salyut series and served as a backup for Salyut 6. It had a length of approximately 16 meters, weighed around 20 tons, and featured 2 docking ports for spacecraft and other Salyut space stations. Its design lifespan was over 4 years. On April 19, 1982, Salyut 7 was successfully launched, despite the challenges faced by its predecessors. Salyut 7 had a relatively smooth operation. Within just over 2 years, it accommodated 7 groups of cosmonaut for round trips. However, after 2 cosmonauts returned to Earth from Salyut 7, it became unoccupied. On February 11, 1985, ground control suddenly discovered that the radio transmitter of Salyut 7 had shut down, leading them to believe it was a tripped circuit breaker. Usually, resetting the breaker or a similar procedure would resolve the issue, just as it would with electrical breakers on a spacecraft. However, despite issuing the restart command, the transmitter remained unresponsive. Consequently, Salyut 7, orbiting 300 kilometers above the Earth's surface, became like a disconnected kite, potentially drifting anywhere or even re-entering and crashing into the Earth. At an altitude of 300 kilometers, although it appears to be in outer space, it is still within the Earth's atmosphere, specifically within the ionosphere, which is part of the Earth's thermosphere. At this altitude, the space station experiences reduced atmospheric drag. but is still well within the Earth's gravitational pull. To maintain its orbit, the space station requires periodic orbital adjustments to compensate for Earth's gravity, atmospheric drag, and solar wind, ensuring it stays within its designated orbit. This necessitates the use of the space station's thrusters, or other attitude control systems to provide propulsion. These power sources include batteries and solar energy, which provide energy to the space station's equipment. After the power failure of the transmitter on Salyut 7, the ground control center couldn't determine whether it was just the transmitter that lost power, or if the entire space station had lost power. Consequently, a massive 20-ton object was drifting in space. If they were to abandon it, there was a high probability it would crash into the Pacific Ocean. However, this would be a significant blow to the Soviet Union, which had recently regained some space advantage, and was unacceptable to the Soviet leadership at the time. There was only one way to save the out-of-control Salyut 7: sending cosmonaut to inspect and repair it. But normally, astronauts were sent up via docking. What made it difficult this time was that normal docking required synchronization between the spacecraft and the space station in terms of receiving and transmitting commands from the ground control center, including positional information. The two spacecraft would communicate and cooperate to automatically complete the docking. However, with Salyut 7 unable to transmit signals, the ground personnel had no way of accurately determining its position. If the space station's attitude control system wasn't functioning, it would be subject to the influence of Earth's gravity and enter a dangerous flight attitude, such as rotation, making docking extremely risky. Experts on the ground estimated at the time that the transmitter and receiver circuits of Salyut 7 had likely short-circuited and burned out, possibly causing the entire battery pack to burn out as well. If the environmental control and temperature control systems inside the space station ceased to function, the interior of the spacecraft would become like an icebox, and all equipment, including the spacecraft's attitude control system, would stop operating. The spacecraft would eventually crash to the ground. It was an urgent situation that required immediate repair. The Soviet Union decided to launch a Soyuz spacecraft carrying 2 cosmonauts for a manual docking. This mission was extremely difficult, and any mistake could result in the destruction of both the space station and the spacecraft. After careful consideration, they selected 2 cosmonauts: Vladimir Janabekov, who was highly familiar with docking and had performed a manual docking during the Salyut 6 docking system failure, and Viktor Savinik, an excellent maintenance engineer who held the record for the longest spaceflight. These 2 individuals were considered the elite among the elite. However, the situation turned out to be even more complex than they had imagined. 4 months later, the Soyuz spacecraft finally launched. After 2 days of flight, the 2 cosmonauts finally caught sight of Salyut 7. They discovered that all the solar panels on the space station were not deployed, indicating that the internal systems of the station had stopped functioning. They maneuvered the Soyuz to catch up with the space station, encountering the most challenging problem. The space station was rotating just like it appeared from the ground. First, the Soyuz had to match the flight velocity of the space station, which was 28,000 kilometers per hour. At this speed, docking with the rotating space station was incredibly difficult, with a high risk of catastrophic failure. They brought a new device with them, a laser rangefinder, to accurately measure the distance to the space station. When they were only 20 meters away from the space station, Vladimir attempted the first manual docking. Although they had trained extensively on simulators over the past 4 months, the actual situation was much more complex, and they had limited fuel with only a few chances to succeed. As expected, the first attempt failed. The ground control center recalculated, realizing that the Soyuz needed to increase its speed for a successful docking. This meant that if the docking failed, a collision between the spacecraft and the space station would occur. While the ground personnel were still arguing, Vladimir initiated the second attempt. Viktor shouted to him to follow the ground's instructions, but Vladimir stressed the urgency of the situation and insisted on trying immediately. He increased the spacecraft's speed and made slight adjustments to the distance, ultimately achieving a manual docking with the rotating Salyut 7 in a thrilling moment. While the ground personnel were still debating whether to take the risk, Vladimir's voice came through, announcing a successful docking, and everyone on the ground was shocked. Although they successfully docked, even more demanding challenges awaited the two cosmonauts. As they entered the troubled Salyut 7, inside, the situation was worse than anticipated. Due to a power system failure, all the temperature control systems had ceased to function, resulting in sub-zero temperatures. The equipment surfaces were covered in frost, and opening any device was like opening a refrigerator, requiring the space station's temperature control system to melt the frost. Due to problems with the oxygen supply system, the carbon dioxide concentration in the space station was high, and oxygen was scarce. They took turns entering the space station for repair. After a day of hard work, they fixed 5 out of 8 battery units, as well as the oxygen and communication systems. However, the temperature inside the space station increased slowly, and they had to manually chip away the thick layers of ice on the equipment, but it was too time-consuming. It was estimated that melting all the frost would take 10 days, significantly exceeding their planned timeline. Therefore, they decided to connect the radiators to the solar panels, utilizing them to accelerate the temperature rise inside the space station when it was oriented towards the sun. After another day, when they returned to the space station, they found that all the frost had melted, and water was floating in a zero-gravity state throughout the station, posing a danger to the operational equipment. They used up all the towels in the space station to wipe the water, even resorting to using the undergarments of the previous mission's female astronaut. Finally, they used an air blower to blow all the water droplets to the rear of the space station and collected them together. After 5 days of effort, the two cosmonauts successfully dealt with the water situation inside the space station. But another problem arose. An external sensor on the space station was malfunctioning, and they had to go out for repairs. As the two cosmonauts ventured outside, they witnessed a mysterious glowing entity. A massive disk emitting a soft blue light, which gradually transformed from a sparse cluster into a dense cloud-like formation. Soon after, a winged humanoid figure appeared, radiating a gentle and warm light. Then 2, 3, 4, until the 7th figure appeared. Both cosmonauts were in awe of the spectacle, and it lasted for 10 minutes before the clusters disappeared into space. After 10 days of repairs, the two cosmonauts finally restored Salyut 7. Upon their return to Earth, Vladimir reported the incident to the space agency and stood by his account. However, while engineer Viktor received the title of Hero of the Soviet Union for the second time, Vladimir, who reported the angelic event and accomplished the docking, did not receive the same recognition. The question remains, what were those angelic clusters of light? After Vladimir's report was released, the relevant departments in the Soviet Union launched an investigation into the incident. Medical experts believe that the strange phenomena observed by the cosmonaut may be hallucinations. This is because the magnetic field, radiation, and gravity environment and space are different from those on the Earth's surface, and people are in a prolonged state of weightlessness. Moreover, Vladimir and his team worked continuously for 10 days in extremely harsh conditions, experiencing extreme fatigue and excessive stress, which could have led to the emergence of various peculiar hallucinations. Some scientists also believe that the hallucinations could be caused by radiation streams from the Milky Way. Furthermore, the probability of astronauts experiencing mental disorders in space is much higher than on Earth, as indicated by their psychological condition reports during space missions. However, this explanation cannot account for the simultaneous occurrence of hallucinations in both astronauts. Scientists have fiercely debated this phenomenon. Some argue that the so-called angelic lights were actually the result of sunlight reflecting off the solar panels deployed by the space station. The two astronauts, exhausted to the extreme, were misled by this light. This incident was classified as highly confidential in the Soviet Union at that time, and it was not until the dissolution of the Soviet Union that many previously classified documents were made public. Dr. Marina Popovich, a former Soviet Air Force honored pilot, disclosed this incident in her 1993 book titled UFO Glasnost. The Soviet Air Force even discovered fragments of unidentified flying objects at 5 different locations, and analysis of these materials indicated that they could not have been manufactured on Earth. Popovich, the first female pilot in the Soviet era to exceed the sound barrier in a fighter jet, and the third female cosmonaut in the Soviet Union, was in a position to have access to classified information from the Soviet Space Agency. She chose to disclose these secrets for 2 reasons: the dissolution of the Soviet Union and her desire to reveal some of the facts she knew to the public. Popovich strongly advocated the theory that there are tens of thousands of different civilizations in the universe. In an interview, Popovich said, "Some of them have visited Earth and have a deep understanding of us. To them, we are just like grains of sand, and their spacecraft are as large as our planets, complete with an entire ecosystem." Furthermore, Popovich mentioned that she enjoys spending evenings with other pilots, astronauts, submariners, and former military officers, as she likes to discuss mysterious UFO events with them. She stated that most military personnel are prohibited from publicly disclosing the phenomena they have witnessed, and have strict procedures for reporting such events. In fact, many people are afraid to report what they have seen, because doing so would categorize them as having psychological and mental issues, leading to grounding or exclusion from the mission team. Vladimir from the Angel incident is an example of someone who experienced such treatment. Popovich also mentioned an interview she had with the legendary American astronaut Buzz Aldrin. As we all know, the first manned moon landing was the Apollo 11 mission, where 3 astronauts reached the lunar surface. Neil Armstrong, the first person to step onto the moon's surface, gained worldwide fame, while Aldrin, the second person, is less well known. During their time on the lunar surface, they experienced 2 minutes of communication blackout, which was officially attributed to a communication failure. However, Aldrin revealed to Popovich that they saw large bright spots, cutting off their conversation. Popovich repeatedly questioned Aldrin about what they had really seen on the moon's surface, and Aldrin explicitly told her that they saw white disc-shaped objects, and there was more than one. Though the reason behind these sightings remains unknown, Aldrin strongly believed that there were extraterrestrial beings or civilizations inside those disks. Popovich also mentioned that an acquaintance from NASA provided her with an unaltered photograph of the lunar surface, which showed an irregular structure clearly not of natural origin. This explains why NASA has many high-resolution lunar photographs, many of which have been deliberately modified. All these phenomena indicate that when humans undertake missions beyond Earth, if there are indeed extraterrestrial civilizations observing us, they have witnessed humanity's efforts. Perhaps to them, humanity venturing into space is indeed a significant progress. Just like a group of ants finally leaving their nest and arriving at the edge of a city. As humans, we would also carefully observe such a development. Until next time.